With Avengers Endgame bringing a close to so many character stories, many fans were left wondering, what is next? What does a world after the snap look like, and what sort of new stories are there to tell? Well, the movie I will be reviewing today, Spider-Man Far From Home, not only follows Peter Parker dealing with the aftermath of Endgame, but seems to point at what the future of the MCU might hold. Before I jump into my review though, I'd love to know your thoughts on all this. Whether it be during or after the video, feel free to voice your opinions in the comments below. With that out of the way, let's jump in. Serving as a sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, and picking up not long after the events of Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home sees Peter Parker struggling to deal with a variety of issues in his life. Not only does he have to deal with stuff on the civilian side of things, such as going back to school in a world where some people aged 5 years, but when it comes to being Spider-Man, now that Tony Stark is gone, the world is desperate to know if he is willing to step up and fill the void that Iron Man has left behind. Wanting to put all these worries aside and avoid heroics for a few weeks, Peter wants nothing more than to enjoy his class trip to Europe and maybe even confess his feelings to MJ. However, he is reluctantly pulled back into action when he is recruited by Nick Fury to team up with a new hero named Mysterio to face elemental threats from another dimension. Now overall, I wouldn't say this is the best one out of movies called Spider-Man 2, but I did still really enjoy it, and I think the film has plenty of good things going for it. For starters, I think Spider-Man stories work best when there is a sense of relatability to them, and Far From Home does this quite well. Whether it is the awkwardness of trying to confess to your crush, the disappointment in a trip not going quite the way you had imagined, or the all too familiar feeling of having to sacrifice fun time due to responsibilities, I once again enjoyed how they managed to nail a superhero who feels like an everyday guy. Sure, there's all this crazy superpowered stuff going on that is fun to watch, but the fact that the film has stuff I can relate to, like the weird teachers just trying their best, or having to put up with a couple being sickly sweet, is fun as well. Speaking of the superpowered stuff though, with this being the 23rd entry in the MCU and just one in the large sea of similar movies, I am always afraid that there will reach a point where I look at a movie and there will be nothing new or exciting. However, just when I think that's gonna happen, a movie like this does some stuff that makes me go, you know, that was pretty cool, or that was a creative use of X character's powers. While I don't want to get too into detail in order to avoid spoilers, I will briefly mention 3 moments that I liked and thought were pretty unique. The first is a scene in which Spider-Man is out of webbing and has to rely on just his spider sense to make it through a hallway of killer drones. Up to now, the MCU Spider-Man has always seemed to have technology on his side, so to see him forced to use nothing but his own hands and instincts was, I think, a pretty cool moment. Another moment I really liked is one featuring Mysterio. This one is a bit harder to explain without context, but let's just say that when he is showing off the extent of his powers and doing all sorts of homages to stuff like the comics and prior video game appearances, I thought that was pretty hype. Finally, when it comes to the ending of this film, I thought it was very cool how they take an unexpected turn that not only messes with the status quo, but really sets up questions for Spider-Man going forward. Many fans were wondering where the MCU could possibly go now that Thanos is out of the way, so being shown a scenario that could lead to a number of possibilities going forward is really neat. Finally, I think that all the characters in the film are really well done. When it comes to the leads, Tom Holland continues to be the perfect blend of Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and I think that Jake Gyllenhaal absolutely knocked it out of the park as Mysterio, doing a great job portraying the character in his movie debut. Even the supporting characters are all great, with Ned still being a humorous sidekick, Flash being a bully that you love to hate, and MJ feeling like a bit more of a complex character this time around. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is nice how well everyone seems to fit their role and add their own little bit to the movie. However, on the flip side of that, I do feel that the movie does have some flaws. One thing I felt was a bit off was the opposing forces' motivations. While their plan itself isn't bad, and overall I do commend how effective they were, I felt that when you get to the moment of the villain explaining why they're doing what they're doing, it sounded pretty weak. Another thing that I found to be a negative was the weird push regarding Peter's spidey sense. Though it does lead to a cool moment that I described a bit earlier, I still found it weird how much of a focus they suddenly gave to this part of his power set. Therefore, when he does finally use it, it makes it a bit awkward how he used the one thing that has been telegraphed as important throughout the whole film. Finally, and this might be more of a personal nitpick, but I feel like the whole going on a trip to Europe and being far from home aspect didn't really add much to the movie. I mean, they make a big deal about Peter Parker being on a trip and visiting all these different locations, but I feel that all of the running around just made the film a bit muddled, I guess you could say. Like, they could have just as easily made him go on a trip to, say, Florida or something, and I think having all of the fights go down in a place that is new, yet more centralized, would have worked better. In the end though, I did still find the film to be a lot of fun and an enjoyable experience overall. Filled with humor, down-to-earth relatable moments, cool superhero spectacle, and a good cast, I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is either a fan of Spider-Man or has been having a good time following along with the MCU. But hey, that's just my opinion. And remember, don't take anything I say too seriously. After all, I'm just a wannabe reviewer. Thanks for watching.